software. Right friends, welcome back to newspaper editorial discussion, and there are 4 issues of the Hindu today. The first issue is with regard to the RK Nagar Assembly constituency bypoll, and this is not totally exhaustive, or you can say the electoral reforms. That issue is to be dealt with separately, and I have taken the information whatever is evident from this, and I touched upon some points, but electoral reforms is one issue which is to be dealt with. This is most important now, and look at the issue. This is income tax authorities have raided the house and offices of State Health Minister Vijay Bhaskar, and here as per the news reports, rupees 5 crore cash was seized from the confidence of Dr. C. Vijay Bhaskar, and at the same time incriminating documents in the form of overall money distribution totaling to rupees 89 crores were found. Then distribution charts ward wise, voter wise were also found, and voter wise list indicating how much amount is to be paid were also recovered. In view of all these things, now the Election Commission took a decision for cancelling RK Nagar Assembly bypoll. So, the pertinent points which comes to everybody's mind are: laws must be stringent with regard to the disqualification of candidates. This is one aspect, and another important aspect is, in several cases nowadays the various things in kind are distributed instead of cash, and nowadays gold chains are being given, gold coins are being given, various types of transfers in kind are taking place instead of cash. So, it is becoming difficult to track these activities, as mobile coupons are given, like that. There are several aspects where these things are distributed in kind. The prescribed limit for each candidate is sometimes blurred by the expenses spent by the political party. Political parties, there is lot of anonymity, and at the same time for spending by the political parties there is no limit. There is a limit by the spending of the candidate. So, there is lot of in fact the total expenditure is blurred because of no limit on the political parties, and political parties donations are also anonymous in nature up to certain limit, because up to 20,000 till now they can take cash, and because of that lot of money to the political parties is accruing as anonymous donations. Now government reduced it to 2,000, but that is not going to make much difference. Then the next point is, Election Commission monitored the process with unprecedented number of central observers, flying squad teams, static surveillance teams, video surveillance teams, but the basic point here is they were able to monitor this way for one particular assembly constituency. If it is the case of general elections, how can they monitor, right? So, there is no mechanism to implement strictly the poll promises. Various political parties are making different poll promises, and there is no mechanism in fact to implement strictly the poll promises. So, radical changes are required in the electoral arena, and this discussion is only partial, and in future we will think about a comprehensive capsule with regard to what are the issues to be looked at, or you can say what needs to be done in electoral reforms, right. Then second one is transformative visit. Here in today's discussion, the second one, this is transformative visit. This throws some light how it will benefit, or you can say it will further cement relations between India and Bangladesh. And here India assures Bangladesh, and one word is there, that is elephant in the room. What is the meaning of elephant in the room? the meaning of elephant in the room is there is an obvious problem or difficult situation. The situation is difficult, but people avoid talking about it. Under those circumstances, you can call an elephant in the room. So, there is an obvious problem or difficult situation that people do not want to talk about, right. So, under those circumstances, you call it as an elephant in the room. This came in this passage, please understand that. Now, positive aspects, as per this editorial, there are positive aspects, and the editorial says that the visit of the Prime Minister will further strengthen, or you can say further cement ties between India and Bangladesh. The first aspect is the Prime Minister assured that there will be early resolution to the Teesta water dispute. And one point I would like to tell you, Teesta water dispute is important for India from the strategical perspective also, that I deliberated in the next article on Teesta. And two important questions from today's editorial discussion: critically examine mental health care bill, or you can say mental health care provisions critically examine. That is one point. The second point is why Teesta deal is strategically important for our country. So, these two aspects are answered in the today's discussion of editorial. So, before going ahead, or you can say these are deliberated in third part and fourth part. Now, let us go ahead with this second discussion, how it will cement India and Bangladesh ties. First one is the Prime Minister assured that there will be early resolution to the Teesta water dispute, and this comment or the Prime Minister stated in presence of the West Bengal Chief Minister. So, it clearly shows the resolve on the part of Indian government to solve the Teesta issue. Second one is, when we look at India-Bangladesh landmark achievements, I have already told you, first one is India's support of liberating Bangladesh in 1971. Second landmark achievement is Liberation War. Second one is Land Boundary Agreement. Third one is the cooperation from Sheikh Hasina government on terrorism, as well as Bangladeshi action of non-sheltering insurgents from northeastern part of the country, that in fact improved the law and order situation in northeastern part of our country. Then the third point is, altogether 22 agreements were signed, which include energy cooperation and connectivity. Another point is 14 MOUs or pacts were signed in the field of private investment, and most important MOU is on the framework for defense cooperation, which formalized existing arrangements for defense exchanges, military training and high level defense visits. So, defense cooperation agreement. In a nutshell, the article or this emphasizes that there are already good ties between India and Bangladesh, and further cementing of the ties, the visit will be useful. So many agreements were signed, MOUs were signed. The most important one is framework for defense cooperation. Next one is agreement of cooperation on peaceful uses of nuclear energy, which endorsed the existing training programs for Bangladeshi scientists at Indian facilities. Most important one is India announced line of credit up to $5 billion. Line of credit means this is the limit given. Here Bangladesh, for its infrastructure works, for improving its infrastructure like rebuilding old railway lines, construction of bridges, power plants, ports and other works in Bangladesh, they can access loans up to $5 billion. That is the meaning of line of credit. Line of credit means if they are in need, they can access credit up to that limit. That limit is $5 billion, out of which $500 million is exclusively for defense purchases, and this is the largest such LOC extended to any country so far. This $5 billion overall, the line of credit. Please understand the word line of credit. Line of credit is the limit up to which they can access loans from India up to $5 billion. Out of $5 billion, $500 million for defense purchases and $4.5 billion are for development of infrastructure in Bangladesh. So, they can access loans from India for development of infrastructure projects up to $4.5 billion. Then all these measures will go a long way in furthering the bonds further, or you can say in further strengthening the bonds with Bangladesh, with which India shares its longest international border, right. So, this is about this article. So, the outcome of Bangladeshi Prime Minister's visit will further cement ties between India and Bangladesh, but Teesta river water is not yet solved. And next issue, this is the third article, this is with regard to Teesta river water, and here please look at this article. I am elaborating this, why Teesta river water deal is important for our country. A question can be asked in mains examination also. This is most important issue. Not only you should not look at it only from the perspective of water dispute. You have to look at it from the perspective of how an amicable solution between India and Bangladesh is required, especially it is more in India's interest, in my opinion. So, an amicable solution must be found for Teesta. Here you see Teesta from Bangladeshi perspective. This article was written by the think tank. Some of the author is from some think tank. Bangladesh shares 54 of its 57 transboundary rivers with India. After Ganges, Brahmaputra and Meghna river system, Teesta is the fourth largest river shared between the two countries. There was some ad hoc agreement in 1983, and subsequently there was some agreement proposed in 2011, and it could not come through because of objections from West Bengal Chief Minister. And please go through this. Here I have given factual information. The Teesta river's floodplain covers an area of some 2,750 square kilometers in Bangladesh, and it supports nearly 1 crore people in Bangladesh, and 1 lakh hectares of land is irrigated every year, and it is impacted during dry season. So, this is from Bangladeshi perspective, right. And Teesta river, it originates in Sikkim. I am going to present one capsule on Teesta also. And historical perspective, 1983 there was ad hoc arrangement, and in 2011 almost a deal was about to be struck, but West Bengal Chief Minister objected to it, and West Bengal Chief Minister commented in different tone number of times, and now the need is there to conclude this agreement. The comments of West Bengal Chief Minister are not consistent if you go by the comments during the past few years. That is one part, and here I am going to deliberate certain important aspects. Why this deal is strategically important for India. This is beyond this article. This article is talking about only the requirement of this deal for Bangladesh, but it goes much beyond that. The first and the foremost is why it is strategically important from Indian perspective. The first and the foremost is Bangladesh is one of the friendly countries, and we are experiencing one or the other problems with the neighboring countries. We are experiencing one or the other problems with the neighboring countries. Probably the exception is Bhutan along with Bangladesh. And if you look at our neighboring countries, the first and the foremost which comes to everyone's mind is of course Pakistan. Pakistan is now blindly supported by China. Then second point is Nepal. Nepal in between went to China to get some agreement or to extend railway lines, at the same time to get supplies from Tianjin port. In between, Nepal approached the doors of China. And if you look at Myanmar, we have seen now today itself there was one oil supply deal or oil pipeline starting from Kakpu port. It is the grand plan of China to connect the Bay of Bengal through Myanmar. Then if you look at Sri Lanka, already Hambantota port is there. Now Hambantota port, the equity is converted, or you can say debt is converted to equity. Now Chinese companies will have ownership in Hambantota port. It is against strategic interests of India. If you look at Maldives, Maldives recently passed a resolution last year that when some company is investing $1 billion, then the long term lease can be given for the islands. So like this, we are having several problems with the neighboring countries, and under the circumstances, Bangladesh is a key ally for India. So this one important aspect one should not forget. There is cordial relations with Awami League government, and we are facing problems, as I have already told you, with the neighboring countries like Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Pakistan, and only country which stood with us is Bangladesh. Of course, Bhutan is there, but Bhutan is a small Himalayan kingdom. Of course, Afghanistan is also there, which has got a boundary with India. And Afghanistan at present, if anyone wants to go to Afghanistan, you cannot go by road, because of the reason this region, Gilgit-Baltistan region, is occupied by Pakistan, and at the same time, if one has to reach Afghanistan, people have to go by sea and then by road to Afghanistan. So connecting to Afghanistan is not that easy. Under these circumstances, Bangladesh, cordial relations are very much essential. Second one is history, culture, language binds both the countries. We have already discussed Bengali is the official language in Bangladesh. Third important aspect is because of the stringent steps taken by Sheikh Hasina government, our northeastern part is quite peaceful, and the cooperation in counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency prevented establishment of bases of insurgency groups from northeast in Bangladesh. Some of the insurgency groups have got bases in Myanmar, but insurgency groups by and large have no bases in Bangladesh. So Bangladeshi government is fully supporting. So Bangladesh is very much essential for peace of northeastern part of our country. Bangladesh shares boundary with 5 states of India, and 4096 kilometers of boundary is there. So to prevent the foothold for insurgency groups of northeast into Bangladesh, the good relations between Bangladesh and India are very much essential. As I have already told you, India shares the longest international border with Bangladesh, 4096 kilometers, and out of which West Bengal shares the maximum boundary with Bangladesh. Then India is trying to bring to life BIMSTEC mechanism, and recently BIMSTEC outreach summit was held. Basically, for what purpose this BIMSTEC was established? BIMSTEC was established for economic and technical cooperation. For economic and technical cooperation, these are Bay of Bengal adjacent countries, and now government is trying for restoring or putting to life this BIMSTEC mechanism because of the problems with respect to SAARC because of Pakistan. So, to avoid Pakistan, now this BIMSTEC mechanism is going to come to life, and this is quite Bangladesh role is quite critical to put this BIMSTEC on track. Then the radical elements in Bangladesh may try to whip up the passions by raising the Teesta issue, and Bangladesh Prime Minister is facing elections in 2019, and India should look at this issue in a cordial manner. Then the next issue is for improving connectivity to Northeast. Another important and vital aspect for improving connectivity to Northeast, Bangladesh is a key country. Already Akhaura Agartala railway line, Akhaura is in Bangladesh, Agartala is in India. So, this railway line is going to be constructed at Indian cost, and at the same time there are plans to access Chittagong port also from Tripura. So, cordial relations with Bangladesh are very much essential to put these programs as per the schedule. Then Bangladesh is the key country for operationalization of BBIN motor vehicle agreement. This BBIN motor vehicle agreement is basically facilitating seamless movement of vehicles in 4 countries, but it was struck up because of Bhutan, it appears. And here for BBIN also Bangladesh is the key country. Then with this, let us conclude this why strategically it is important. So, we deliberated around 7-8 points for peace in the Northeast, for good connectivity to Northeast. At the same time, we are having bonds with respect to culture, language, history. Not only that, Bangladesh Liberation War, India helped. At the same time, landmark land boundary agreement. So, there are several issues concerning Bangladesh. More than all these things, it is sharing the longest boundary with India. Under these circumstances, solving only one irritant left with Bangladesh, that is Teesta water deal, amicably assumed significance. Right friends, look at the last one, mind the treatment gap. Here also you can expect a question in the mains examination with regard to critically examine various provisions of Mental Health Care Act 2016. This bill was passed recently, and there are several aspects. Chaining of the patients is prohibited, mental patients. Chaining is prohibited, they will have property rights. Second one is sterilization is prohibited for mentally affected patients. At the same time, it prohibits electroconvulsive therapy for the minors, passing on electric current to the brain. Passing on electric current to the brain is electroconvulsive therapy that is prohibited for minors. In adults also, it is to be given under certain circumstances only, and protects or restores property rights, and it prohibits sterilization at any stage of treatment. It allows a mentally ill person to make an advance directive how he or she wants to be treated. It decriminalized suicide. So, attempted suicide is not criminal now. So, these are important aspects of this Mental Health Care Bill 2016, which was passed by the Parliament recently. Right, having learned the features, now further information is, as per Global Burden of Disease study in 2013, 50% of all diseases are caused by non-communicable diseases, or you can say 50% of all the diseases are categorized as non-communicable. So, communicable diseases means they are infectious diseases. Non-communicable, please look into this, non-communicable diseases are heart diseases, diabetes, cancer, these are all non-communicable diseases. Now 50%, or you can say total 50% of all the diseases are non-communicable diseases. Globally, this non-communicable diseases share is increasing, and mental disorders are 6% of the total disease burden. So, 6% are mental disorders, and a third of these mental disorders are due to depression, and which also contributes to suicide and ischemic heart disease. Ischemic heart disease means the supply of blood or oxygen to the heart muscles will be hampered. This sometimes may happen because of extreme stress, and suicide is the leading cause of death of people in India aged 15 to 29. There are only 43 government run mental hospitals across the country. Only 43 government run mental hospitals throughout the country. Then at present, more than 70 million people are living with mental disorders. More than 70 million people are living with mental disorders. So, this is factual information. Then, if you look at critical appraisal, there are several points in this article. In fact, you can expect a question on critical appraisal of mental health care bill. There are several gaps, social stigma is there, and some myths are there. So, this article throws some light on all these aspects. There are just 0.3 psychiatrists per 1 lakh mentally ill patients. For 1 lakh mentally ill patients in the country, the availability of psychiatrists is 0.3. Bareilly Hospital, he is taking one example of Bareilly Hospital, where 350 patients can be admitted and daily 200 patients can be seen as outpatients, has got only one psychiatrist, and it is the need of the hour to increase the availability of manpower. So, the bill is okay, bill has got several provisions, but the important point here to note is the availability of psychiatrists, supporting staff, psychologists, that must be increased on war footing, so as to make the application of this bill a reality. Next one is health expenditure is just 1.2% of GDP. If you look at 2017-18 budget, another important aspect is out of the total health budget, only 1 to 2% is spent on mental health. The allotment for health, or you can say public expenditure on health, is abysmally low in our country. Normally, it is expected to be 5% of GDP, that is just 1.2% of GDP. More than that, only 1% to 2% of it is spent on mental health. So, how can you improve the infrastructure with such mega expenditure? Then the third point is, there is a general perception in the country that mental illnesses are pathological, and at the same time they are even criminal. Hence, the perception is that the mental patients do not deserve the type of rehabilitation which normally we give for other disease patients. Normally, if a person is affected with some disease, we normally try to rehabilitate that patient, but the mental disorder in our country has got some sort of social stigma, and people look down upon mentally ill patients. Then how to come out of this? Then the fourth one is the treatment gap. What is the meaning of treatment gap? This is the gap between the persons suffering from illnesses, and the persons seeking medical care. There is a huge gap in our country, which is a treatment gap. So, the treatment gap is quite high, and basically this is due to social stigma. People sometimes hide their illnesses. Sometimes because of social stigma, people do not come out and do not state that so and so is having mental illness. In fact, families hide the mental illness problem, and this is because of social stigma. The next point is, there is another perception that ignorance, lack of knowledge, there are some superstitions, supernatural beliefs, all these things are impeding the treatment, and moreover treatment gap is there higher for women. So, in case of women and girls, the treatment gap is quite high in comparison to men. Then the next one is, the treatment meted out to especially women is too worse, and here several families and relatives abandon them. Several families join them, sometimes without their consent. At the same time, several families and relatives abandon them in mental hospitals, and once the patient becomes all right, sometimes there will be no one to take them back. That is the unfortunate aspect. Then ECT is being administered, electroconvulsive therapy, that is being administered on manageable patients also, and this electroconvulsive therapy is giving electricity to the brain, passing electric current through the brain, and that is to be administered only under specific circumstances. And it is being given even for the manageable patients also, and there are no specific guidelines with the usage of electroconvulsive therapy. Then women and girls with psychological or intellectual disabilities are often subject to not only just physical and verbal abuse, but also sexual violence also. Sometimes women became pregnant in mental hospitals. Then the next one is, government hospitals refuse to admit mentally ill persons in the ICU on the grounds that this ICU can be kept for other people or other diseases. So, overall mentally ill patients are receiving second class treatment in our country. The infrastructure is not sufficient, the hospitals are not sufficient. So, under these circumstances, we have to see whether the bill will take care of all these things. It is no doubt in the right direction, but whether it will help overcome the negative attitudes, massive neglect of mental health care, rampant abuse, then unchecked inhuman practices, only time can say. And before concluding, the author is suggesting community based health care, and this is to be digged further, not much details are given in this article. So, how it will help for mentally ill patients? So, this also may be a potential question. Critically examine how community based health care will be beneficial. When community based health care is there, people can come out of this social stigma, and community based health care can take care of the needs of mentally ill persons in a better way. So, there is a case in point for shifting from institutional health care to community based health care for people suffering from mental disorders. And here an evidence shows that community based medical health care initiative reduces the treatment gap. We already discussed treatment gap means persons suffering from mental illness and persons who already taking the treatment. There is a wide gap now. When community based health care is implemented, then it will reduce treatment gap due to increased supply of mental health services through frontline workers and their linkage with physicians and psychiatrists. And it will lead to increased demand for mental health services due to improved mental health literacy. Substantial reduction in the median cost of care resulted from availability of general as well as specialist services. So, the author says, because of community based health care, costs will reduce, social stigma can be avoided, community will take care of that, then this will be beneficial. So, he is putting a case for community based health care for mentally ill patients, but this issue is to be digged further, right. So, this community based health care for treating mentally ill patients, this may be one issue which may come up for discussion in future. So, this weekend we are going to produce one capsule on Teestha, why it is strategically important, but most of the things I deliberated today. So, out of today's discussion, 2-3 aspects from mains perspective are very important. One is why Teestha deal is strategically important for India. Second one is critically examine this mental health care bill. Third one is whether community based health care will lead to improvement in treating the patients of mentally affected, right. So, with this let us conclude today's lecture part, editorial discussion. Please do join at 12:30 hours for the discussion of English comprehension. So, have a nice day. Thank you. Thanks a lot.